We talk about new technologies aimed at providing additional protection for children in hot cars, our first impressions of the 2020 Ford Explorer, and we take audience questions next on Talking Cars. Hi, and welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Mike Massol. And I'm Mike Quincy.
So as our typical, round, we're going to start with some news. And this is a very emotional subject in that the young children perish in hot cars in the summer months. It can happen year round, but obviously we see a spike as temperatures increase. And on average, about 38 kids per year. Already this year, 2019, 29. And rather than get into the whys and the physiological stuff, which we've talked about before, I want to talk about how we get out of this. And how do we've been talking about making the unintentional intentional, be it a change of routine, putting something to remind you there. But automakers, child seat manufacturers are beginning to put in technologies which can help. Mike, and I know you've done some background.
Yeah, so they're basically kind of like rear seat reminders. They're in some General Motors vehicles, they're also Hyundai, Nissan, and others are going to have these. And what they do is it basically uses rear door logic. So if you open your rear door of your car a certain amount of time, usually it's about 10 minutes before you start the car, then you start the car, you do your drive. When you turn the car back off, it's going to give you some kind of an alert or a chime or a reminder in the instrument panel that says, hey, check your rear seat.
Right.
And those are helpful, and we've tested them. And the point is to remind parents
and caregivers.
And caregivers.
Whoever the caregiver
is. Or even if
right.
you have it also works for animals as well, because
yeah.
animals can die in the backseat of cars as well. So Hyundai has gone a step further than other manufacturers. They have something called an ultrasonic motion sensor, which is in the ceiling behind the rear seat. And that's the most advanced form, so far. And we've tested that as well. It does have some limitations because for it to work right, it requires a fair amount of motion from the kid, which may not happen.
But it doesn't pick up just infant breathing or something small.
So, anyway, we're really happy about all this stuff. Emily Thomas, who is
Dr. M.
Dr. M. Doc M's as I call her. She has a PhD.
Yep.
She's kind of like our child seat guru, along with Jen, of course. Jen is heavily involved in the child seat program. And she's excited about what's going on. And she's also excited. Here's a quote she said in one of our most recent stories. She says, 2018 had the highest number of kids dying in hot cars since 1998. It's encouraging to see an automaker, she's talking about Hyundai, expand the use of technology that has such large implications for saving children's lives. This is exactly the kind of response we want to see from the auto industry, and that's why we support the Hot Cars Act of 2019 to put heat stroke prevention technology into every new production vehicle as quickly as possible.
Right. So just to clarify that, the Hot Cars Act is federal legislation that would require some of these technologies.
Now, do I recall correctly in some of our meetings that we've had automakers, reach out to us and be actively working with us, hand in hand to get this done?
Well, that's some of what makes this newsworthy, this episode, in that a couple of these manufacturers, Honda, Nissan, have said they will make them standard on four-door vehicles by 2022.
Yeah,
so that's what kind of
and
makes
Hyundai
it
has said that
newsworthy.
as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's really it's not just parents, but this can happen to anyone. I mean, whether it's caregivers, babysitters, whatever people are going to be watching out for your kids. I mean, people get distracted. Yep. The human memory is flawed, as that article pointed out, and it can happen to anyone.
Right. And I think I've shared with our audience, this almost happened to us. I was traveling, not my husband's routine, to take our young son Griffin to daycare, and he got 7-8 miles past where he was supposed to drop him off. And in our case, Griffin made a noise, and he went, oh my goodness, I didn't drop him off. But we could very much see how that could have been a tragic situation for us, someone who works in child passenger safety every single day. I get all emotional talking about it. But anyway.
And we've written several articles about this, both in talking about these rear seat reminders and how things have gone with our testing of those. And also just, the fact that people do inadvertently leave their kids in these hot cars. And we have some pretty good tips because maybe you don't have this rear seat reminder in your car. And I think one of our best tips is force yourself to go into the back seat of your car, right? And that would be by, like, I carry a backpack to work every day. So that would be, if you have a kid, put your backpack or your briefcase or whatever it is that you need to grab every day before you go into work or whatever you do, put it in the back seat. That forces you to open up that rear door.
Right. In particular, if it's not your routine. So, yeah. And we talk about, advanced driver assist systems and AEB, backing up drivers. Let's back up parents and caregivers too.
And I have 2 teenage sons, and they can't wait to get, away from each other. So that's usually not a problem in my house.
That's right. So, moving on, a little lighter, we're going to talk from the track. We have the venerable, and I do think it's a venerable, 2020 Ford Explorer. So, certainly an iconic car. Little exterior difference. I mean, it doesn't look vastly different
Looks like
from
an
the
Explorer.
previous version. We actually said the last formal redesign of the Explorer was in 2011.
Yeah.
And some big changes underneath that exterior, Mike.
Yeah.
I keep saying Mike Monticello.
Yeah, we've got to be specific for those of you that are just listening
Mike
and
and
not
Mike.
watching. So this is Mike Monticello talking.
The beauty and the brains, right?
Right. So yeah, if you were to just look at it, I don't think most people would know that it's an all-new Explorer, but it is an all-new Explorer. Instead of being based on a front-wheel drive platform like it was before, it's now based on a rear-wheel drive platform. It's a platform that's actually shared with the new Lincoln Aviator. The Aviator is more like the luxury version of the Explorer. All-wheel drive is still available like it was before, so it's not like that's going to change. It has a turbo 4-cylinder, a turbo V6. There's also a hotted up Explorer ST model. And so it's a different vehicle. We're a little mixed. This is our first impression.
Yes.
We're not as blown away as I think we were kind of hoping to be. I mean, this is a very popular vehicle, and I think there are some things that are better. I think the steering's better. It's more responsive, and it I think overall definitely handles better than the old Explorer. But it doesn't really matter so much how it handles versus the old Explorer. It matters how does it compare against the top vehicles in the class, right? Like the Subaru Ascent, or maybe even our current favorites, the Kia Telluride and the Hyundai Palisade. And when you look at the vehicle as a whole, we'll get a little more deeper into it. I think that people who maybe have an Explorer now or are thinking about buying, another Explorer, it would do them well to go drive some of the competition, because this thing does not step up the level compared to the competition the way I think it really should.
The way a full redesign might.
Well, give Ford some
Quincy.
give Ford some credit. I mean, they stuck with this model name. Because you wonder why a car company built up a reputation for a car and people know exactly what you're talking about, and then they just ditch the whole thing. Yeah, we're going to start over. But cough cough Lincoln, had the MK series and all that. No one could follow that. Yeah. But everyone knows what you're talking about when you say Ford Explorer. And I drove it last night, and overall the impression that I get, it's just big. It feels big. It feels
like
heavy.
It's working?
It feels like you feel every pound of this truck when you're going around a corner. Forward visibility I thought was really compromised. I thought the dash was really long. I thought the window area was short. I thought the hood was really long.
Really big pillars.
Really big pillars.
Rearward,
And our $48,000 XLT doesn't have adaptive cruise control.
Yeah.
$48,000 and no adaptive cruise control. I mean, there was nothing in this truck that made me think, oh, I'd take this over a Telluride.
But it does have a lot of safety.
Sure.
But our
Telluride also
Ford
had
Co-Pilot 360 is their package.
But how could you have such an expensive vehicle and no adaptive cruise?
Well, okay, so I will say personally, I'm not a huge fan of adaptive cruise control. Actually, I don't mind not having it. And
I use it all.
I'll tell you why. Because what happens? You have to be so attentive with adaptive cruise control, because it always, you have to move over to pass another car way sooner than you would think you'd have to, because it's going to sense the car and then start slowing down. Well, now the vehicle's slowing down. So for me, it doesn't matter. We don't consider adaptive cruise control a safety system. We consider it a driver assist.
Right.
So personally,
it's convenience.
It's personal preference. I don't care about that. What I care about is that, like I said, I think the handling's definitely better, the steering's better, and I think it's going to end up being with one of the better ones in the class as far as that category.
Right, as far as handling
But
goes.
I think when you look at the drivetrain, so our vehicle has a 2.3 liter turbo 4-cylinder. 300 horsepower, 10-speed automatic.
Right, they all have 10-speed
Right,
automatic,
and
which is a major
sounds
change.
good, but
right?
what happens is,
Yeah.
and again, this is early days with the vehicle, but it has such a short first gear, and then it's got this turbo. It's kind of frenetic. So you get going, and then immediately it has to shift from first to second, and that first, the 1-2 shift and the 2-3 shifts are pretty abrupt.
Yeah,
And now that we've noticed that sometimes automatics work in a sense as we put the brake in the mouse. So, not final judgment on that. But right now, that's not great. It also doesn't sound very good, the engine. And there's even this weird, during full throttle at higher revs, there's this weird exhaust noise coming from like the back seat area. And so there's just some issues.
It's not a quiet cabin.
The interior is lots of hard plastic. It's kind of like not that much of a step above an F-150 or a Ford Ranger in terms of the plasticness. When you look at a Hyundai Palisade or a Kia Telluride, a Subaru Ascent, these have really nice interiors, and I think Ford missed the ball here a little bit.
Yeah.
Missed the boat.
They were trying to catch the ball. They were trying to catch the ball and they missed it. Whatever metaphor you want to use. They were going for the pass and they missed it. I don't know.
I was a little more positive. One thing I do like about Explorer, and they've kept it, is the seat. They've stuck with that seat. My husband used to have an old Explorer Sport Track, same seat, and it just suits me. And I know that's not the case for everybody.
That's a very,
Bolstered.
Well, it's
seat.
a very personal thing.
It is.
Some
It
seats,
is.
Everybody.
Sometimes seats work great for someone and terrible for another one. You never know. But anyway, yeah.
The other thing I was thinking is, haven't they come such a long way from the original My Ford Touch control system?
Right.
So they have a touch screen, but everything's big. I think I'm getting old. It's much. You're not spending a lot of time taking your eyes off the road top, right? All that. I think loyal Explorer buyers who are just upgrading to the next Explorer will be happy.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that there's some new competition out there that is going to give them a run for their money.
They do something different than anyone else, though, which is that they have they give an explanation of the advanced safety systems on the touch screen.
This is what you're turning on or off?
This is to see what these systems do. No one does this.
Oh, that's
so
great.
It gives an onboard animation of automatic emergency braking, of blind spot warning, of rear cross traffic warning. In the case of automatic emergency braking, you go on the screen and you hit settings and you go to where the advanced safety systems are, and it has all the safety systems listed. Then you can press a button and it'll like an information button, and it gives an animation of the Explorer coming toward another vehicle and then stopping. And it shows the same thing for blind spot warning, for rear cross traffic warning. So if you don't know what those, like for instance, it's not called rear cross traffic warning. And so you might be like, well, what's cross traffic alert, right? You might think that's a frontal thing. It's a rear thing. It's when you're backing up, and it shows the Explorer and it shows where the sensors are right on the screen, and no one else is doing that. So I think a lot of people don't understand these advanced safety systems and what they do.
Which we're working hard to
We're working hard,
fix, right?
Right. But Ford is showing that this is, if you want to see what your system does, this is exactly what it does.
I can see a Ford salesperson at a dealer, using that screen
Absolutely.
with a new customer and saying, okay, this is what this means. This is what this means.
Onboard dictionary.
Hopefully.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't experience that. I'll have to dig a little deeper in my drive. So, as always, brand new, stay tuned. We'll have full road test of the new 2020 Explorer coming up.
Coming soon.
It's coming soon to a theater near you. So, moving on to your questions. As always, love them. Keep them coming. TalkingCars@iCloud.com. The first is a video question from Peter. Take a listen.
Hello, Talking Cars. This is Peter from Irvine, California. I advise friends and family about car purchases, and I noticed in the most recent auto issue some apparent inconsistencies in the reliability data that I'm hoping you can explain. The comparison I'm looking at is the last 3 years of data for the Mazda CX-9 and comparing that to the BMW 5 Series. For 2018, the Mazda had all but 2 categories as much better than average, while power equipment and in-car electronics were better than average. The overall reliability is rated, however, as much better than average. And then if we look at the BMW 5 Series, it had identical trouble spot scores, except in-car electronics was higher scoring, but the overall reliability for the model year is worse than average. I understand the category weightings are different, but how do you specifically explain the 2018 difference of what would be 3 points on your 5-point scale? Thanks a lot and keep up the good work.
So Peter has a question about reliability, and I'm going to throw this to you, Mike Quincy.
We understand it can look very complicated, but there's a relatively easy way to explain it. And that when you're looking at all these trouble spots, and we're looking at the overall problem rate. So it's not like a grade point average. You don't like add up all the green circles and say, well, it must be perfect. And then it turns out not so perfect. But we're looking at the actual problem rate of 2018 vehicles. And most of the trouble spots have a problem rate of less than 1%.
As you might expect from a brand new vehicle.
It's a brand new vehicle, and that's what we don't expect a new vehicle to have like any problems at all. So less than 1%. The average new cars are pretty well put together. So when you've got any trouble spot that's even about 1% or
slightly above it,
slightly above point whatever, it's going to throw things off, and it's going to produce a below average reliability rating.
Right. So just to kind of wrap it up. So this is real data, 2018 models from respondents to our reliability survey. Even if individual trouble spots aren't of a level that flags a downgrade in their rating, the cumulative, if you have a car that has multiple trouble spots area, that cumulative can affect that overall rating for that year.
Right. I mean, the sum of the parts is somewhat concerning for the overall reliability score. It looks green, but there's more behind that.
And the fact that there's any there is probably concerning.
Correct.
And what we talked about is a car that has multiple trouble spots, when it's brand new, our data has shown that's likely going to be a car
that's a problem.
That's going to be a trouble-prone car, or more trouble-prone car.
If it starts out with problems, it'll likely have more problems as it gets older.
Right. Hopefully we've clarified that for Peter and others. So moving on to our next written questions. Kevin from Wyoming says, my 2014 Volkswagen TDI wagon was totaled in a recent hailstorm. So sorry, Kevin. I'm looking for a replacement, something with comfortable seats, great road manners, and is reliable. I've narrowed my choices to a 2017 Volvo S60, 2014-15 BMW 3 Series X-Drive, or a 2015 Lexus IS 250 with all-wheel drive. Thoughts? Mike Monticello, what do you think for Kevin?
Well, I would probably stay away from the Lexus IS. I'm just not a huge fan of that car, and it also has a pretty low owner satisfaction scores from our survey. So
you looked at my notes, didn't you?
Oh, I did. I'm a copycat. How do you think I got through school? Just kidding. 4.0 grade point average. No.
Lie.
And then I actually like the Volvo S60, and then the BMW. I think you probably can't go wrong there, but I think what I would go with is an Audi A4. I mean, I think that
changed it up on Kevin.
Yeah, I think you need to look at the Audi A4. In a way, the current A4 is out BMWing BMW in a sense, in terms of that really the really good driving manners, really comfortable seats, has good reliability, all the things that he wants. Plus, it actually does a better job of the ride handling mix than BMW is currently doing.
A little quieter, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a reason it's at the top of our standings. Yeah. So that's what I would recommend looking at that.
Yeah. I kind of kept to Kevin's list.
Oh, sorry.
You're the well-behaved one here, okay?
And I would say the BMW 3 Series, Kevin, and you said 14, 15. If you look at our reliability and owner satisfaction, the 15 specifically is better in both areas than the 14. So, and a more engaging car, I said the same thing. The IS looks sporty, not so sporty.
Right.
Mike Quincy.
Yeah, I thought the S60, same comments about the IS, tight interior, BMW 3 Series, the best of that bunch.
Right.
But I would go outside of that.
Also went off the list,
I always do
apparently.
I would say go for the Genesis G70. I love this car, best controls. Love the styling, fantastic handling. You can save a fair amount of money if you're comparing new cars, a new 3 Series to a new G70. At least according to the ones that we tested, it's about $9,000 less for the Genesis over the BMW. And everyone has a BMW, so for goodness sakes.
Yeah, or wait a little bit and get a G70.
Get a used G70.
Wait a year or so and get a used G70.
Absolutely.
I think you can't go wrong with that.
Well, he totaled his Volkswagen.
that's true.
So
And
it probably doesn't have a lot
the,
of time.
The
But
TDI
anyway.
wagons, I loved that car.
Yeah. Well, it was
what a
sad.
what a highway cruiser.
That's the sorry, Kevin. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll share a moment for the TDI wagon.
So, okay. Greg from Michigan says, thanks for producing a great podcast. Thank you very much, Greg. I have questions about your headlight testing and how it compares with the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. I'm considering buying a Kia Telluride, which we already talked about. You tested the EX and rated the halogen projector headlights a 4 out of 5. Very good. IIHS later rated those same headlights poor. What are the differences between your testing and that of the IIHS that would produce these different results? So I'm going to...
We happen to have a headlight.
Lucky we have you
We
on the
happen
show.
to have a headlight
Yeah,
expert
so-
right here.
For Greg. So the biggest difference between how we test headlights and how the IIHS tests headlights is we are doing a static test. The car is stationary. We are looking at our series of signs out on the track. The IIHS is driving. So they're moving towards their censored signs, both in a straightaway and at a curve. We're only on a straight. The difference, and this is my theory of why some of these cars, not many, but some are showing differences, particularly LED cars, is that LEDs in our test, in IIHS test, are brighter and wider. Right. So what the IIHS has to do, because they're driving, the signs are out at the sides of their lane, both in the curves and in the straightaway. Our signs in our test are in the centers of our lane. So as they're driving, they're getting greater benefit from LED equipped.
A wider swath.
A wider swath, which picks up their signs, particularly in their curve test.
Right.
Another couple differences is that they are also making deductions for glare more significant than we are, which the LED version of the Telluride gets, and benefits, they're adding points for vehicles that have auto high beam assist, which Telluride gets. So these were halogen, so they don't have the benefit of that. Right. We see projection straight ahead. It may not have done a good a job in the IIHS test of picking up those signs to the side of the road.
But you've been noticing in your testing that like you said, the LEDs are brighter and wider.
Right.
But a critical thing is how far you can see down the road.
Right.
And quite often the LEDs aren't performing as well as some of the better halogens, correct? As
Right.
far as seeing distance down the road, which is what you need. You're trying to see an animal, you're trying to see
Right.
another
Straight
car,
ahead.
a person, right? So it's you don't want to be misled by the brightness of the LEDs, because what ultimately matters is how well do they perform.
Straight ahead. That's
Right.
the direction you're moving. That's the direction you need to break. John Linkoff did an article this week. LEDs can be brighter, but often lack clear advantages straight ahead.
Clear advantages.
So,
I get it. You get
yeah,
the clear.
I
Yeah.
do.
It's
He's
a
good.
really bright idea here. But generally, the takeaway is that if you have an opportunity to get extra cost LED headlights, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck.
Right. And it sounds a little odd, but we have offered the advice of if you are a person that drives a lot in the dark or on unlit roads, take the opportunity to do a test drive at night. There are good and bad of every headlight technology, and it may make a difference in what you choose. So moving on to our last question is from Doug. Hey, Talking Cars, love the podcast. Watch every episode as soon as I can. Thank you, Doug. Many people talk about the SUV craze, but as I understand it, an SUV refers only to body-on-frame vehicles. But people keep referring to crossover utility vehicles, CUVs, as small SUVs. That bothers me. CUVs are supposed to refer to unibody designs, where SUVs are real SUVs, right? Mike Monticello.
I'd say right and wrong. The CUV part definitely. The crossover SUVs,
Right,
crossover
what we would call
utility vehicles.
crossover, yeah.
We don't actually usually refer to them as crossovers, but that is a unibody car, or a vehicle that's based on a car-based SUV. Body on frame SUVs. That's what, when SUVs started first coming out, a lot of them were body on frame. Think of the SUV was originally, first of all, it's sport utility vehicle. So
Right.
it means a wide range of vehicles. But it was kind of like taking a pickup and adding it was like a hybrid between a pickup and a station wagon, right? But ultimately, the world refers to SUVs, or definitely in the U.S. market, we refer to SUVs as something that has an elevated ride height, so that it hopefully has a little bit better off-road ability.
Yep.
It also gives you that elevated seating position. It has a lift gate.
Right.
You know, in the rear, it has a tall, you know, it's like a taller vehicle, taller
Yep.
roof, and typically all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. So with those characteristics, there's many vehicles that are classified as an SUV. So we don't distinguish between, you know, a body-on-frame or truck-based SUV and a unibody or car-based SUV. We call them all SUVs. But our categories are more about, you know, is it a compact SUV? Is it a mid-sized SUV?
Right, more
Is it
about size,
yeah,
right.
Or is it a luxury
Yep.
SUV? So that's how we classify them. But then there are some difficulties. We even have some difficulties with how do we classify this vehicle? Like, say, the Toyota CHR.
Right.
This is a vehicle that looks like an SUV, but it only comes in front-wheel drive.
Right.
So we had to put it in a compact car category because we think if the vehicle isn't available with all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, then we're not going to classify it as an SUV because it doesn't have one of the key attributes, which is this off-road or all-weather ability that people are looking for in an SUV.
And there still are some old school
Body on frame.
truck-based vehicles, the Toyota 4Runner, the Lexus GX 460, you know, the current, you know, Ford Expedition, Chevrolet Tahoe. These are still big, bulky trucks. You can use these for towing. You can go off-roading with a few of these. So they're not completely dead, but they're certainly not anywhere near as popular as the crossover models.
I almost look at the CUV, the crossover, as a subset of the SUV. That they're all SUVs, the CUVs are a subset of that SUV. So hopefully that helps. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Any information on the things we talked about, the vehicles we talked about, see the show notes. Keep the questions coming, talkingcars@icloud.com, and we'll see you next time.